Abe has a bunch of questions. He says, "Hello, Charles and Vincent. I am an avid listener from L'Etoile du Nord, and this show has turned me from a social democrat to a Christian democrat. And finally, monarcho guild distributist.
Ooh.
Anyway, I just have a couple questions for Charles. First, what is guild socialism? And what is its relation to distributism and corporatism?"
Well, these three are actually not dissimilar. It's just they're starting with very much the same first principles, but looking at different aspects of the social and political order. I'll explain what I mean by that. They all start out with the Catholic notion of man. The economy is made for man, not man for the economy. The interest of the state is the common good. Now, there are non-Catholic guild socialists, non-Catholic distributists, non-Catholic corporatists, but they don't really matter for our exercise.
Okay.
Because these three things are all, in a sense, well, on the one hand, they're confessionally neutral. Unlike capitalism or communism, which are self-justifying in purely economic terms, these three things cannot justify themselves solely in economic terms because they go back to the worth of the human being. Which means, to put this another way, none of these three systems, and again, you might even call it systemettes or one interconnecting system, for reasons I'll explain momentarily, they require a non-economic justification, having to deal with a certain vision of man and society and the state. If it's not going to be Catholicism, it'll have to be something else. That's why you could have fascist corporatism. It's why you could have Protestant corporatism in Latvia. But so what I'm saying is, or the Germans, they had this racial thing under the Nazis, but none of those are strictly economic. All of them look to basically see the economy and economics as a means to an end, not an end in themselves. But I'm going to deal with the Catholic side of distributism, corporatism, and guild socialism simply because, A, they're the only ones I'm interested in, so that makes it easy. And B, they're also, in my humble opinion, the ones like this to work in the long run. So, what are they? Well, corporatism we'll start with. Corporatism is the idea that, well, firstly, all three are answers to Marxism. Okay, now, what is Marxism? Well, Marxism takes the Industrial Revolution and the growth of an industrial proletariat treated like garbage and a wealthy bourgeoisie that owned everything as constant enemies. And for the Marxists, and this was simply seen as the reality.
Yeah.
For the Marxists, the answer is to destroy the bourgeoisie, elevate the proletariat with a set of revolutionaries who would basically guide them. There'd be a period of tutelage in which they'd be trained to be free people, and then the state would wither away and everybody would be happy. That was the idea. Now, of course, that was never going to happen. Instead, you would get to the tutelage period, and that would never end. So, in response to that, all three of these sorts of thinkers said, well, no, the labor and capital, and for that matter, the consuming public, should be friends and allies. Again, the whole thing is the common good, you see.
Yeah.
So instead of class conflict, class enemies, we need class cooperation. You see?
Yeah.
All right, well, how do you bring that about? Well, for the corporatists, the idea was to organize the differing economic factors in society uh, as corporations. So in other words, where you had, we'll take shoes, okay?
Yeah.
Well, you've got, in the normal run of things as they're developed, you've got the shoemakers union. You've got the shoe sellers association. You've got independent cobblers and all that, some of whom are just repairmen, and others of whom actually are the fashion designers of the shoe world. You know, bespoke cobblers. And from them, the ideas go to the shoe retailers, you know, who try to cash in. And they, in turn, in their factories, have the shoes made, depending upon, you know, what they think is going to sell. And then the factory workers in the shoe factories are the workers. So for the corporatist, and actually for the Guild Socialists, the two are quite similar in this respect. What you would do is you would organize a corporation or a guild that all these elements were part of. In other words, the workers, the capital, their managers, the salespeople, the independent cobblers, etc. And together, they would determine things like the quality of the shoes, what, you know, that kind of stuff. So that rather than fighting each other over costs, they would set just wages, just expenses, and so on and so forth. And the beneficiary would be the public, of whom, of course, they themselves were also members when it came to the other corporations. You know, you may be a member of the shoe corporation, but as a member of the shoe corporation, you're part of the public when it comes to the iron corporation.
Yeah.
But more than that, so far the Guild Socialists and the corporatists they would say basically the same thing. Where it would get interesting, though, is that for the corporatists in particular, was the idea that your representation in a sort of parliament should be on the basis of your corporation. So in other words, you might have a couple of houses of parliament, but one of them would be based not on geography, but on corporation. So there'd be one house dedicated to the different economic interests of the state. And they would be represented there that way. And these would be the building blocks of the state, basically. Now, distributism is, functionally speaking, actually somewhat connected with the other two. Its emphasis is different, though. When they looked at the structures, distributists simply saw the fact that property is best when it's widely distributed. In other words, a situation it's better when there are a lot of small landowners than a lot of big estates. A lot of small businesses rather than huge conglomerates. And so they looked for the widest possible distribution of property. You can see how that could fit in with the other two. So that I had spoken of the, for the corporatist, you'd have the big shoe companies, you know, and the little cobblers. Well, if there was a distributist element to it, there wouldn't be any big shoe companies. It'd just be small shoe companies, and then independent people. So that's roughly the connection between them. And all three, of course, saw the common good of the citizen as being the primary interest of the state rather than simply profit. So does that, and actually, you know, you can put, when you think of these three as connected as attempts at class cooperation, another word you can use for it is the modern Catholic social theory word solidarity. And another term that's been used to describe these sorts of things is solidarism. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, I wish our society, I feel like it's within grasp and that we have the mechanisms and tools to be slightly more distributist in practice, just simply in terms of regulating mergers and acquisitions. Well, when you've got like one $40 billion company merging with another $40 billion company.
Well, see, the problem you get into, though, is who's going to be in charge, who's going to make the decisions. In other words, as things stand, remember the state is never neutral. You cannot have a neutral state. The state is always in the hands of someone, and it always has an animating philosophy, a state church, if you like.
Mm.
And it always has a ruling class. I don't care what the state calls itself. I don't care what it's got that. So you say, well, it feels like it's within our grasp. Well, it would be, except that the people who dominate in our setup are the people who would profit from such a merger.
I see.
Now, and also their vision is very tunnel oriented. The idea of the common good is completely alien, partly alien as a whole to our political tradition.
Yeah.
Certainly alien to these guys. I mean, there is no individual in the United States of America who looks at the United States of America as my country and as Americans, and to Americans as my people.
Mm.
Because we're all equal. And the problem with that kind of equality, is that no one has responsibility.
Mm.
No one, I mean, you can have a president like Reagan or a president like Obama, but either way, they'll be out in 4 to 8 years. And it's not as though they feel that God gave them responsibility for life to try to help his people work themselves out.
Yeah.
We don't have a figure like that. We can't.
That's so interesting. So it seems, so just revisiting some of the things you said, so you're talking about Marxism, and one of the things you're talking about the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, and you were saying that basically they should be at war with each other, or you weren't saying that, but Marx was saying that.
No, well, they said they had to be,
yeah,
because their interests are inevitably
yeah,
separate. The proletariat, the bourgeoisie want to squeeze as much money as they can out of the proles, and the proles obviously want as much money as they can out of the bourgeoisie.
So is that fair to say that that's the basic error of Marxism, is basically there is no common good?
Yeah, and that there is no God, but from that comes no common good.
Right, no God, and therefore no common good.
You see, if there is no God, then human beings are nothing but a bunch of competing animals. And see, another less elevated era in Marx's thinking. He takes away God, he takes away the common good. Well, then if that's the case, why is the good of the proletariat more important than the good of the bourgeoisie? Why shouldn't the bourgeoisie be able to squeeze every drop out of the proles?
Does he answer that question?
No. I don't think he had one. I don't think there is one. I did know a person, a very wealthy individual, not a Catholic, who said, I accept Marx's theory completely.
Okay.
Then you can guess what the rest of it was.
Yeah.
He squeezed every drop he could out of the working class.
I see. Other thing that's just fascinating, the whole, your term was a little bit funny, the tutelage period.
Yeah.
The tutelage period. It brought this really sort of morbid imagery in my mind, where perhaps these innocent peasants are sending letters to Lenin or Stalin. It's like, do you know when the tutelage period is over?
Yeah, well, no, but I can tell you when your lifespan is over. That would be the response. So you didn't ask that question. The state would naturally wither away.
Yeah.
Once the proletariat was sufficiently mature, the state would wither away.
Yeah.
Organically, naturally, without any issues. You know, that period of tutelage, it always made me think of the motto of the Soviet Psychiatric Service. They used to say, punishment has to end at some point, but treatment can be forever.
Um. Ah.
Well, you're not quite ready for freedom yet. It's been 700 years. Yes, we know. We'll let you know. Because the state will naturally wither away. See, part of that too was the idea that man can become virtuous under his own guidance, and that if you give him the right surroundings, he will inevitably become so.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, another great error of Marx's thing was to think that what makes men bad and sinful is the structures under which they live.
Mm.
But it's not what makes men sinful. What makes men sinful is his fallen nature. And that being the case, the state, once established, will never wither away.
Hmm.
And the more, and this is again kind of a lesson for history, but a fact of human psychology as well, the more you push the lie, the more the truth will assert itself. The more you claim everybody's wonderful, the more the reality will make itself known.